I first fell in love with musicals when I was probably about 3 years old, and I saw a film version of musicals. And the first one I remember seeing was The Sound of Music with Julie Andrews. And to this day, it's probably my favorite musical. So I really love that. But in terms of live performance, I fell in love with live performance musicals when I was a little girl. I was living in England with my family, and they used to take us to London to see live shows. And there, they have Pantomime in London, and it's really fun. It's meant for children and families. It's really over the top. There's lots of music. And the first pantomime that I went to, I was probably about 8 years old, and it was an over the top version of Snow White, but I loved it. I'd never been to anything like it. Just the energy and enthusiasm and fun was so infectious. I'd never experienced anything like it before, and I remembered really wanting to get up there and do something like that myself when I got older. I could see myself doing what everybody else was doing on stage, and that's when I really remember loving just the glamour of the theater, the whole experience, walking in, the way the theater smelled because it was an old building, and the lights, and it was just incredible to me. It was magic. I think it's so important to go see live theater because the movie experience cannot replace the experience of live theater. I feel like it's not just an audience sitting there watching people doing things on stage. I feel like there's really a connection between the two. The audience is just as much a part of the storytelling as the people on stage. Even if they're not saying a word, just the fact that they're there and the energy that they have, the people on stage can really feel that. So there's definitely a give and take, and you're creating something incredible together. It's really a joint effort. And I just think seeing a movie is fun and it's exciting, but it's nothing like live theater. And it's also storytelling, and whether it's in song or just a play, and a lot of the stories that we are watching on stage are so important for us, and it provides a little bit of escapism too, which we really need right now. Well, I hadn't heard of P3 until I saw the audition notice for Doris Day, and I saw the notice on Backstage, and this was a new theater to me. I hadn't heard of it yet, and I was really fascinated by the audition notice because I have never heard of a musical about Doris Day before, but I was familiar with her and I love her music. And I actually had a friend who was in their production of Steel Magnolias. So I reached out to see what her experience was like, and she had wonderful things to say. She loved working with this company. Everyone was incredibly kind and so professional, and this is a wonderful new up-and-coming theater, and she really encouraged me to go for it, which I did, because for me, the one possible deal breaker for me was the distance, because I don't live in Long Beach. I live further away in Los Angeles, but it's worth the drive. It's been a wonderful experience, and if anybody is on the fence about auditioning for this company, I encourage you, please come audition for P3. It's a wonderful company to work for. Well, Day After Day explores the life of Doris Day from her earliest years, about 16 years old is when we first get a glimpse of her, all the way into her 60s. And she was so active the entire time. And the first half of the show deals mostly with her radio career, Doris Day the singer, because there's Doris Day the singer and Doris Day the movie star. And there's an overlap, but she was very active in both, and she could easily have had a successful career just doing one or just doing the other. So the arc of it is telling a little bit about her life and using the songs that she really sang to help the ebb and flow as we learn a little bit more about her as the story progresses. My creative process when I'm first starting to learn the ins and outs of a new role is I tend to gather as many details as I can. And so in this instance, I am inundated with all kinds of things to see as I learn about Doris Day. So I'm not just building a character from scratch. Doris Day isn't just a character. She was a very real person, a wonderful person. And there's so much footage of her, and thanks to technology, I can just go right onto YouTube and I can watch her interviews and I can watch her movies and listen to her. And I'm still going through so much material of hers. So I'm very fortunate to have so much at my disposal to learn from. But my creative process, I do tend to start slowly. I usually don't come to rehearsals with everything figured out. It's a vulnerable time, so I make a lot of mistakes, and I kind of figure things out bit by bit, and I'm so fortunate that the people who are directing me in the show have actually done this show before. And one of our directors, Christy, has played Doris Day before, so her help and guidance have been invaluable as I'm kind of navigating my way through discovering this character, this real woman. Well, Doris Day is an incredible person, and the more I learn about her, the more I love her, really. I knew a little bit about her before I was cast, kind of what you might read if you looked up the life of Doris Day on Wikipedia, or if you've seen a few movies of hers, which I had. I'd seen a few movies, and I knew some of her songs, but this has been an incredible exploration of what a remarkable person she was. There were a lot of tragedies in her life, a lot of tragedies. Most of us have had our own tragedies in our life, but Doris was remarkable because she was so resilient. She was so courageous, and she never let these challenges keep her down or hold her back, and she didn't live with bitterness and regret. She was very optimistic and very positive, and honestly, learning more about her has really impacted my own life. Her philosophy about life is a lot like her song, Que Sera, Sera, whatever will be, will be. She just kept on keeping on. She was a real survivor and never, ever felt sorry for herself for 1 minute. So I've just loved learning more about her, not just about her movies and the facts about her life and the places that she lived and the movie stars that she knew, but about all the things that she overcame and still came to the end of her life with no regrets. Is there a lot of pressure to play Doris Day? Well, I would say absolutely, and there should be, because she's so beloved by so many people who've grown up listening to her singing and watching her movies, and she's got this incredible iconic status, almost goddess-like, for so many people who know and love her so well. So of course there's going to be pressure, and I'm working very hard to even try to do her a little bit of justice, because she was an incredible singer and a wonderful actress. I think she's really been underrated for her acting. She was a wonderful performer, very instinctive, the way she worked, but just amazing energy. And it really, who she was, who Doris was at the very core of her being, came out in her singing, but it also came out on camera. It's something that people felt very connected to, that they could relate to her. They sensed something very real and sincere and loving in her. Doris had a sort of joy about her that was contagious. And the people who knew and loved her said that the person that she was on the camera was the same person that she was in private life. She really was that loving, bubbly, joyous person. Well, I have never done a production like this one before, where I have been on stage so much, where it's pretty much just myself and the other actor for 2 hours. One thing that really helps for me is I have so many changes. So I'm literally in motion the whole time. So when I'm on stage, I'm singing or I'm performing, and then I run off stage and I quickly get changed. And so it's kind of like jumping onto a ride at an amusement park. And then when the ride stops, I'm done. So I don't have time to stop and be worried. It's just kind of one continuous activity. But the other part that makes it great is that I have so much wonderful material to sing and draw from, and every single song tells its own story. So I feel like it's just incredibly exciting to me. It's really pure adrenaline. My wonderful co-star, Zach, is an absolutely incredible person to be on the stage with. He is so sweet and lovely and generous, and he has the most gorgeous voice you could ever hope to hear. And it's just Zach and I for 2 hours on stage, and he's so wonderful to be on stage with. He's so giving, he's so talented, and he's really a lovely and wonderful person. I feel safe every moment I'm on stage with him, and by that I mean if I make a huge mistake and mess up, I am in wonderful hands. He is a fabulous person and a wonderful performer. Our two directors are Christy and Tony. They are a daughter and father, and it's been wonderful getting their feedback while we're doing the show because they've done the show themselves before. This is something that they built over time, and they've played these parts all over. They were touring back on the East Coast, and so they are literally the most amazing encyclopedias of knowledge about the life of Doris Day that you could ever hope to have. So I've had so much help and guidance with all of my questions, and they know all the ins and outs. So they've also been so generous with my co-star Zach and I in not only guiding us along the script and the songs and learning more details about the lives of Doris Day and the people that she knew, but they're also wanting to give us the freedom as well to put our own take on things. So they're not asking us to do the roles exactly the same way that they played them. So they're giving us a lot of freedom and also a lot of support. So they're incredible to work with. They're also very kind and patient and compassionate and professional. So I couldn't ask for a better experience. I do think there's an underlying message in Day After Day. As the audience may learn a little bit more about Doris and parts of her life they may not have known before, I think the underlying message is the song that she sang, Que Sera, Sera. It's probably one of her most well-known songs. Whatever will be, will be. I think the underlying message is that even though so many terrible, horrible tragedies happened in Doris's life, she never let it get her down. And that sense of courage and positive optimism and that sort of uplifting look at life is, I hope, the strongest message that people will come away with, what a survivor Doris was. And she never thought of herself as a movie star. She thought of herself as just an average, ordinary working woman. And if she was a movie star, everybody was a movie star. She just was very humble and very gracious. And I hope that people will get a sense of that. So yes, I think the message of, one of the many messages of this musical is courage and finding joy in life. If something bad happens, sometimes it's just leading to something else wonderful and beautiful and good that's happening in your life. And I think that's influenced me, absolutely. So I hope that's something that people will come away with as well. Well, I would love for the audience to come away singing the songs of Doris Day. Whether someone who comes to see our show is really familiar with Doris and has grown up listening to her music, or maybe they've never heard of her and this is all new, I hope that they'll really come away just simply enjoying the experience, singing the songs, having learned something. Doris, just her as a person, was like a shot of pure vitamin C, like sunshine and a big tall glass of orange juice. And I hope that that's the kind of vitality and energy that the audience will come away feeling when they're done. This is something joyful and uplifting, and goodness knows we could all use a little bit of that right now. I think the Southern California community must come see Day After Day the musical because this is our West Coast premiere. And this is a remarkable show. Nobody's ever done anything like this before out here. And so whether you are familiar with Doris Day and her music or not, this is a wonderful show, and it really harkens back to a time that sometimes we feel a little bit embarrassed by because it seemed so pristine and wholesome and joyful and cheesy sometimes. But there's so much joy in it and a wonderful way to escape for a while into another world. And I hope that everybody who hears about the show will come see it. You won't regret it. It's a really wonderful ride for 2 hours learning about her life.
I first fell in love with theater. I think I was 4 years old. I saw Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Pantages Theater. And I asked my parents to buy the album, and I remember putting it on in the middle of the living room and dancing around and learning all the songs. And I think that's when my parents first knew that this would be something that I would do with my life. And then just I did shows in middle school. My first show was Anything Goes. And then throughout high school, and then I studied it in school, and so college, so I've been singing ever since, really. Theater and musicals are important to see. It exposes people to stories that are different from their own, understanding where other people come from, how other people share information. And for me, it's important. Well, first of all, I love storytelling, becoming another person, figuring out what motivates a character, and then being able to come together with another group of people who've all done their homework and work together to create and to tell a story that someone has found valuable for society. So this is kind of a funny story. Well, I don't know if it's funny, but it's an interesting story for me because I had actually taken a 4.5-year pause from performing, and I was in New York and I was seeing a bunch of shows, and it really inspired me to get back into theater. So I went to the library that day, and I opened up backstage.com, and one of the first postings I saw was for P3 Theater's Evita. And it's a show I've always loved, always wanted to do, and I thought, okay, I'll sign up for an audition. And I auditioned, got cast, and honestly, it's been one of the best things that I could have done for myself at this point in my life. My creative process. Well, I'll for instance, this show, Doris Day is a character or a performer I didn't know much about. So I became familiar with her music. I started listening on YouTube, going through all of her music, found songs that I've always loved but didn't know actually were Doris Day songs. And then watched some of her movie musicals, which, are charming, and kind of get a sense of what the time is like, how they're approaching the characters, because it is a different set in the 50s, 60s. It's a different style of acting and leading men, different type of performances. So for me, I really studied that, and then try to add my own take on things. And as we rehearse, you get feedback from directors, from your fellow castmates, and so it all really informs how the show comes together. The main story arc of Day After Day, it's about the music and life of Doris Day, and we start from her discovery with Barney Rapp to joining Les Brown's big band, and then her move into a solo career and movies, and you kind of chart the progression of her career. And my role, I play the narrator, which is, he tells her story, but it's also telling the story of the writer of the show, Tony Santamauro. It's really his character and the way he perceives and his relationship with Doris. So there are moments where the two of them come together as Tony and Doris, and they're reminiscing about her movies and songs in this great movie medley. So it's kind of got a bit of everything. It's storytelling, it's music, it's imaginary relationships of two people coming together. So I play the narrator / the man. So I kind of move the story along with a lot of recounting of various aspects of Doris Day's life, but I also play various men in her life. So I play Barney Rapp, who is essentially the band leader who discovered Doris, and then I play Les Brown, where she came into her own, into major success with songs like Sentimental Journey, and then there's like a cameo with a music producer, Mitch Miller, which is fun. Look forward to that. And so, but mostly it's as the narrator moving the story forward. There is a lot of pressure, I think, mostly on the Doris, because she's, portraying a character that everyone loves and adores and knows so much about. For me, I have a little bit more freedom to be myself, and because I'm essentially playing a fan who's in love with her, adores her work. So it's a little less pressure on me. The pressure comes in that it's a 2-person show, and there's an incredible amount of material to get through for 2 people. We're on stage for about 2 hours. That's a big challenge. My co-star, Deborah. What can you say? She is actually truly phenomenal. I don't know how they found her. I can't imagine anyone else playing this role at this point in time. She sounds like Doris. She looks like Doris. She has her characteristics. It's truly wonderful, and she is a very, very wonderful co-star and person. The 2 directors. So this is an unusual and rare circumstance where you actually get to work with 2 people who wrote the story and originated the 2 roles of the show. So it's been a fantastic learning opportunity to work with people who've already been who've gone through this experience. They've been so insightful. They know so much about Doris, and they both are such fans. And to work with people who are as passionate as they are is really lucky. And the music director, he's been along for the ride as well. They've done this show for 20 years, and so it's great. It's a really unique experience to work with people who understand the material as in depth depth as they do. So yeah, we've been really lucky. What I want the audience to get out of day after day, I want them to have a great time. I want them to I want them to be reminded of their experience watching Doris firsthand, throughout her career. Songs that they love to listen to, parts of movies, scenes. I want them to have a great time, to relive their experience with Doris, and I want them to leave feeling like they've gone through an interesting ride of her life. If you're a fan of Doris Day, this is why you have to come see our show. We have about 53 of her songs, back-to-back, interspliced with scenes from her life, from her movies, stories that you may not be aware of. We go in and take an in-depth look at her life and music, and it's truly fun, it's fast-paced, and you will walk out of here singing Que Sera, Sera, if nothing else. I think the Southern California community must come to our show day after day, because this is a story that isn't often told. We mentioned that Doris Day, while she had this incredible career, not many people talk about it or tell her story. And this is a fantastic rendition where you have interesting facts about her life, about her career, filled with, I think it's like 53 songs from her book. It's just jam-packed with like amazing Doris Day facts and music, and it's fun. I think we do a really good job having fun, and I think you will have a fun time with us. John has created something in Long Beach. What he's done is phenomenal. With the mission of bringing theater to the masses, to people who can't necessarily afford to drive into LA, or to be able to have a local community theater where he can hire actors who don't always have the opportunity. It's a tough business from the performer's side. So the more theaters, the better, more opportunities we have. And for me personally, he brought me back into performing by establishing P3. It brought me back with the opportunity to do Evita. So I'm in debt to John. I think he's done an amazing thing here for the community, and I think we're all pretty lucky for that. I'm grateful.
Hello. This is a special presentation of Stage Explorations, and we are here talking about theater and also promoting our production Day After Day. Chrissy, when did you first fall in love with theater, music, and musicals?
when I was born. No, just a joke. That's the story you always tell.
Right.
I came out with the top hat, kicking and everything. But truthfully, when I was very, very, very young, you started me watching your wide collection of musicals and taking me to musicals. I was pretty much raised on them, the same as eating breakfast or dinner or lunch. Musicals was in there. So, and I just happened to latch on to it, and I loved it with all my heart. So.
Yeah. And you started when you were 6 performing in these musicals.
Yes. That might be, I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you answering the question now?
Yeah. And this next question for us is, why is theater and musicals important to go see and important to you?
Well, it's important to go see, first of all, because you'll never see anything like it. Emotion, and there's nothing like live theater, getting those actual emotions coming right there and then on the spot. But also, if you stop going to see theater, theater will go away, and that will be very sad. So support theater, go see theater. You'll have a wonderful time 9.5 times out of 10, and that's a big plus. And you'll also keep theater alive, and that should never go away.
Right. And keep in mind, being live theater, it's the only chance you'll get to see it. Mm-hmm. Once the show has stopped its run, unless there's a videotape of it, you'll never see it again.
Right.
Great performances have been lost. Okay, how did you start working on day after day production, and why did you have to create the day after day production? I guess that's my question, right? Mm-hmm. I've always been a huge fan of Doris Day since, God, I think when I was 9 or 10. And I respected her choices of music and movies that she made. And as that went on, I got to meet her and spend a week with her in Connecticut, filming a movie called It Happened to Jane. And that was just it. We corresponded back and forth. And Chrissy grew up with her music and was singing all her songs. And as she started getting a little older, I said, I'd love to do a story about Doris Day, but not an expose as many of these bios turn out to be. I wanted it to be a special musical exploiting the fact that her talents were what they were. And it was important to me to get people to see Doris Day. She was very underrated, yet she was the #1 star for 20 years, and 5 of the years #1 at the box office. And believe it or not, this record has not been broken today. So I thought it would be nice to let people learn a little about her career and hear her music.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me about Day After Day's story and the character story arch.
The Day After Day story. Well, you just kind of said that. It's kind of a love letter to Doris Day, and it starts when she's young. It actually starts when she's older, and then it flashes back and talks a little bit about her life throughout the run of the show. In the big band era up to the movies that she did, and so much music that you will leave there going, I didn't even know that was Doris Day's song, or that she sang that, because so much music, wonderful songs. And do you have anything to add to that about the story?
Yeah, even though she had kind of a rough life, she married 4 times and had a husband who embezzled all her money and many, many different tragic things, but we brush over these very quickly. This show is to show what a strong woman she was. She never became a victim. And also, the most important thing is her love for the animals. This is a woman who technically gave up her career to take care of the many, many animals who were being mistreated.
Yes.
What about the music in Day After Day?
Oh, I just kind of said that. The music is unbelievable. There's 52 songs, something like that. You'll love all the music. There's not one song you would go, this is the downtime. It's up, up, up all the way, even with the ballads. Just gorgeous music by so many incredible writers. She was around in a time when I think music was at its best, and you are absolutely going to love these songs, whether you remember them from your past or whether you're hearing them for the first time.
And the different styles are amazing because, as she said, she went through the big band era, and then from there, she was kind of doing small work with jazz combos. So there's a lot of her jazz career. And then when she went into the movies, she was singing actual show tunes. In The Pajama Game, she's belting out a Broadway score. So I think she did every kind of music.
Versatile.
Very versatile, yeah. Okay, tell me about the whole Day After Day creative team and actors. Well, that includes us.
Creative team and actors?
Yes. We are actually co-directing this show. This is weird working with my daughter co-directing. We actually played these roles for many, many years,
20-something years ago.
Yes. And this is the first time we're kind of letting the show go to these wonderful actors. The vocally and acting-wise, tell the truth. They are, I have to admit, even better than us. So that's hard. But I wrote the show, and my daughter's husband, David Cohen, is the musical director. He arranged all the music for the show, and the two actors, which already did an interview, Deborah and Zach, are capturing the characters. She is Doris Day. If you close your eyes and listen to her sing, and he technically is playing me, because the show is about my infatuation for the lady, and through me, you kind of get the excitement that she's giving the world in this performance. Is there an underlining message of Day After Day?
Yes. Que sera, sera. Stop looking at the downside of things. Doris Day always chose to look at the bright side of things. She didn't let anything keep her down. And you're going to find out in this show there were some things that could have taken her down. But she always said, you bounce right back up. Life is for living and to be happy. And that's all she wanted, was to be happy. And she achieved that.
And she even compared herself to one of those blow-up dolls with the round bottoms. Yeah, that you could punch and it go back down and come up. That was her, exactly comparing what she was like. She was, as again, never a victim. What do you want the audience to get out of Day After Day? What do we want them to see?
I would say that same experience. First of all, falling in love with Doris Day.
Exactly.
Really falling in love with her. But the reason you do fall in love with her is because she shows everybody the way you should live your life. Happy, joy. There's so many wonderful things in life, and to harp on the negative is just not good. And that's the message you get from Doris herself and from this show.
Yeah. And why must the Southern California community come to see Day After Day? I think they should come to see it because it's a terrific show, a terrific subject, and one that's not done quite often, if at all, really. Yeah, usually there are cabaret shows that'll feature Doris Day's music that are wonderful, because every song in her catalog is a well-known piece of music, whether it be a standard or some of her new stuff. It seems like most people think Doris Day is just que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. You're going to be shocked to see the jazz standards and some of the great pieces of music she introduced.
Also, another reason that Southern California should come and see this show, really come and see this show, because this show is being put on by the P3 Theater Company, which is a brand new theater company. And it's very hard to get a theater company up and running these days. As I spoke about earlier about live theater, we don't want it to go away. And when somebody puts in that effort to really get shows up and running so we can all see and enjoy them and keep that live theater alive, it's important to come out and really support that theater so that they can keep going and keep bringing you wonderful shows.
And not only that, P3 just finished with two great productions, Evita, which Chrissy starred in.
Time of my life.
Very successful play, and also Steel Magnolias. And I think it's very brave of them to actually choose to mount this project, being a new project and a new concept. Although it's theater style, it's very much can't be described in a sense of what it is. It's a book show, but it's presented in a very different style that you only would have to come, because it's so difficult to explain. Don't you think? Yeah.
Agreed.
And again, we thank P3 and John Peterson. It's for giving us this opportunity to do this show. Yes. And from the day after team and stage explorations, mark your calendar for the day after day production, and thanks for watching. And please come and see it. You won't be sorry you did. See you at the theater.
Hello! This is a special presentation of Stage Explorations, and we are here talking about theater and also promoting our show Day After Day. Now, Deborah, when did you first fall in love with theater, music, and musicals?
Well, Zach, I first fell in love with musicals when I was about 3 years old, and I saw the movie version of The Sound of Music. And I completely fell in love with Julie Andrews and the format of musicals. But my first recollection of seeing a musical live is when I was a little girl. I was probably about 8 years old, and I was living in England with my family, and my parents used to take my brother and I into London to see shows there. The very first one I saw was a pantomime version of Snow White. And if you don't know what pantomimes are, they're really silly, goofy, over-the-top send-ups of musicals, and this one was no exception. It was really funny, but I just remember walking into this old theater and just the dust and the red drapes and the carpet and the smell of the lobby and the glamour of the lights and the audience. Everything about it was magical and enchanted to me, and I knew that I had to be a part of this in some way. So how about you? What was your first recollection of musicals, and how did you know this was something you wanted to do?
For me, my love for musicals started, I must have been 4 as well. My parents took me to see Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat at the Pantages Theater. And I remember I said, I want to be in that show. And they thought I meant, like, I want to go see the show. And I was like, no, I want to be in the show on that stage. And they bought me the album. I learned all the songs. I would, sing along in the middle of our living room in my sweet boy soprano at the time. And then, Disney musicals came out, and, Beauty and the Beast, fell in love with that. Started performing myself. My first show, I was in 4th grade. I did Anything Goes in my middle school. And then continued all throughout. I went to school for singing in college, grad school, and here we are today. It's tale as old as time, I guess. It's just tying it all back. All right, question for you now. Why is theater and musicals important to go see and important to you?
I think that the film experience can be very exciting and fun to go see, but there's nothing like the experience of live theater. It's really an incredible energetic give and take between the audience and the people on stage. We're not just performing in a vacuum. So we need the audience, not just for clapping and applause or recognition, but because you're really a part of the story that's happening right in front of you. You're creating something together that will never happen again quite the same way. So it's really an incredible experience to witness live theater. And the stories that are being told on stage are so important to us, for children, for teenagers, for grown-ups. And also we need that escape, that kind of experience where we're transported out of our regular lives and into another world completely. And theater can really provide that. But what about you? Why do you think theater and musicals are important to go see and important to you?
Like you said, I think there is an experience you have with live theater that you don't get anywhere else. Anything can happen in live theater, and you don't have CGI and special effects. You really have to use your imagination. I think it's a great exercise in practicing, your imagination, suspending belief, and so it's an important part of our culture. We need to keep this experience alive, moving forward, because it's something you don't get anywhere else. All right. So, how did you find out about Day After Day, and why did you decide you had to be a part of this production?
Okay. I saw a notice for Day After Day in Backstage. That's a publication for audition notices for performers. And I was intrigued because I'd never heard of a Doris Day musical before. And this looked like it was the premiere. And I've sung some of her music before in other productions, but I was interested to learn more. And I actually had a friend who was doing a production of Steel Magnolias with P3 at the time. So I reached out to her. I'd never heard of this theater company. It's a newer company. And I said, what's your impression? Are you enjoying it? Are you having a good time? And she raved about this company. She loved working with P3. She said it was a wonderful experience from the very beginning. They were incredibly professional, but also very enthusiastic and kind and gracious. And she was having a wonderful time. She highly recommended this company. So I was excited to audition. How about you, Zach?
So I was actually in P3's inaugural production of Evita, and my experience was so wonderful. I've never been a part of a group of people that were so wonderful on and off stage before, and it just was a company I wanted to work for again, and I will work for this company again as long as they will have me. So John reached out to me, asked if I was interested in auditioning, and hard to say no to that when a producer reaches out to you. So I did, and yeah, really glad I did.
I'm glad too.
All right. Tell me about Day After Day, the story, and your character story arch.
Okay. So the Day After Day story in the musical covers the life of Doris Day from the time she was a teenager, about 16 years old, all the way up to her later years, a very young 60, we'll say. And the story weaves through her life using her music also to tell parts of the story of her life. So sometimes Doris is singing as Doris Day performing, and sometimes she's singing because she's telling you about what's happening in her life. She had a lot of incredible tragedies, but also a lot of wonderful, exciting, and glamorous things that happened to her. And I think even for longtime fans of Doris, they will come away having learned all kinds of things about her life that they didn't know before, as well as hearing some of their favorite songs. How would you answer that? What would you say the main story arc of Day After Day is?
Totally agree. Learning about her life through her music. It's a really interesting approach. I personally play the narrator, so I kind of keep the story moving along, introducing various aspects of her life from her career as a radio star, then moving into her career as a movie star. And at some point, it kind of becomes clear that I'm playing a real life person who's actually had a real life experience with Doris Day. The incredible writer of the show, Tony Santamauro, he met Doris Day on the set of It Happened to Jane.
I think so.
Yeah, and she invited him to be an invited guest for a weekend, and so he's a super fan, and this is really his story. The part that I'm playing, it's really through his lens as an adoring fan who cherishes her work and her who she was as a person. So for me, that's kind of what I'm getting at is my love for her and the amazing things that she does as a performer.
I would add, if we haven't said it already, that this musical really is a love letter to Doris Day, and written by Tony. He truly does love her, just admires her, and holds her so tenderly in his heart. So this is really a remarkable tribute to her. So the narrator that you're playing, it's not just an act. This is a person who really does love Doris and is so excited to share parts of her life in music with you, the audience. Yeah.
Well put. All right. Tell me about the music in Day After Day.
Oh. Mm-hmm. So unsurprisingly, the music in Day After Day that's all music that Doris actually sang. Some of the songs, some of the earlier songs, there are actually no recordings of her singing it, but we know that she did sing it. Like the song, the title of our musical Day After Day, there actually are no recordings that we know of her singing it. So, but yes, absolutely, it's all Doris's music, and it's not just me singing it. Zach sings her music as well as part of a tribute, and she was so prolific. She had so much music, but I hope that you will be excited to hear some of your favorites in this show. There's so much of it. Yeah. How about you?
So yes, we're hitting about 53 songs from her repertoire, which is an incredible feat in a 2-hour show. Yes. Some of it's just snippets, lines as we move through like medleys. But yeah, the songs tell the story of her life. So hopefully, you'll learn more through the songs that we sing about her life, and also you'll be entertained because a lot of it was just really entertaining in
it was the
material.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Tell me about the whole Day After Day creative team.
Oh, well, Zach and I are very fortunate because the creator and writer and the performers of Day After Day are the very people who are directing us in the show. So they really crafted this show over time. You know, they took songs out, they added songs, it kind of developed very organically. And so we are really reaping the very best of what they came up with for this musical. And it's been honed into really like a polished gem of a show. And so we're very fortunate to just kind of show up and be given this incredible guidance and also freedom to interpret things in our own particular way. So this is a really great experience.
Yeah. So Tony and Christy, our directors, Tony wrote the show, and Tony and Christy, father-daughter duo, starred in the original productions of the show. And David, Christy's husband, was the music director. So as Deborah said, this really was an organic process that kind of came together over time. And one of the funny things is, you know, we have a script, but as we're rehearsing, we get to moments where Tony's like, where'd that line go? And it wasn't in the script. It was something that he added ad lib, you know, in a certain production, but it's a really important fact. Mm-hmm. And so we're we're still, you know, coalescing around, it's making a new piece, not a new piece, we are solidifying, continuing to create and solidify this work. So it's been an interesting process working with the creatives.
Yes.
All right, where are we? Is there an underlining message of Day After Day?
Yes, I would say there are several messages, and many of them are in the songs that Doris sang. But I think overall, the underlying message is really that of love and enthusiasm and courage in the face of all that life may throw at you. And Doris was a living example of that. She was very positive and optimistic, and not in a cheesy Pollyanna way, although we do reference Pollyanna in one of her songs. It was something she really lived in her own life, of continuing on and taking that next step. And if a door closes, a window opens. It's a really wonderful glimpse into her life and how she really lived what she believed in. So I hope that the message that the audience will get will be one of joy and courage, even in the face of life's tragedies. And they'll come away feeling wonderful and buoyant and uplifted at the end.
Yeah, I think that really sums it up really well. What do you want the audience to get out of Day After Day? I bet it's
kind of along similar lines. I hope when people come to see Day After Day, they will walk out dancing and singing to her music and feeling like they just had the biggest, most refreshing glass of orange juice that they've ever had in their entire life, because I really feel like she's pure vitamin C. She's pure sunshine. Like she just can't even help it, just by her very nature. Doris, even though she's no longer with us, her music and her energy and her zeal for life are incredibly contagious. And I hope that people will literally feel that sunshine has entered their hearts when they've come to see our show. Okay. For our last question, why must the Southern California community come to see Day After Day?
Well, this is the West Coast premiere of this show, and no one's doing anything like this. This is a story that isn't often told. You get an inside look at her life, Doris Day's music. It's a really fun, jam-packed 2 hours whirlwind experience, and I think you're going to really have a great time learning and singing along with Doris Day.
I completely agree. It's a happy, joyful, bubbly, sparkling ride from the second the show starts until the time that it's over, and we can't wait for you to come on the ride with us. From the Day After Day team and Stage Explorations, mark your calendar for the Day After Day production, and thanks for watching. See you at the theater.